The first time I died, a plastic dummy with my face fell from a roof and knocked me under a truck. The second time I saw my own face, it was running from a training slime while 200 students laughed. Reincarnation had promised me magic. It had not warned me that my magic would need rescue from a creature shaped like blue pudding. My clone stumbled across the examination circle with both hands raised. The blue slime bounced after him. Each bounce made a wet slap against the stone. "Fight it," Rufus said. My clone turned, swung his wooden sword, and hit the slime with all his strength. The blade sank into the blue body. Then it bounced back and struck him between the eyes. He fell flat. The slime landed on his chest and began chewing his shirt. The students in the amphitheater exploded with laughter. Gareth leaned over the front rail. The bronze hound beside him looked strong enough to eat my slime and ask for dessert. "Nolan," he called, "your summon is losing its clothes." I noticed. "Should we give it a smaller slime? Do you have one that is already asleep?" The laughter changed direction for half a breath. Gareth's smile tightened. Rufus struck the floor with his staff. The examination circle went dark. The slime stopped chewing, and my clone vanished in a cloud of pale dust. I felt nothing when he disappeared. No memory, no pain, not even the taste of the dust that had entered his mouth. That was normal. Summons gained experience for themselves. Their owners gained only the shame. Rufus raised his voice so every student could hear. "Nolan, single clone summoner. Initial combat grade, failed. Summoned unit strength, 1 point. Original strength, 10 points. Effective ratio, 1/10. The ranking crystal above the arena flashed. My name dropped from the middle of the board to the bottom. 482nd. There were only 482 new students. The applause was crueler than the laughter. I looked at the 3 attempt stones beside Rufus. Academy rules gave every student 3 trials. Only the first stone had gone dark. "I have 2 attempts left," I said. Rufus did not look at the stones. "The result is clear." "The rule is also clear." His jaw moved once. Rufus had spent 12 years turning Greybridge Academy's summoning class into the best combat program outside the capital. Every failure lowered his funding. A student whose only summon had 1/10 of his already ordinary strength was not a student to him. I was a bad number wearing shoes. "A second test requires an examiner's approval," he said. "I do not approve." The students became quiet enough to hear the slime still dripping behind the barrier. Rufus continued. "Your combat scholarship is cancelled. Your dormitory place will be reassigned tomorrow. You may remain as a service student if you pay 8 silver before the end of the week." 8 silver? I owned 4 copper. 100 copper made 1 silver. My total wealth could buy half a bowl of soup if the cook liked me. Gareth folded his arms on the rail. "The equipment hall needs someone to wash practice armor. His clone can clean the inside while he cleans the outside." That earned another wave of laughter. Rufus nodded as if Gareth had offered serious academic advice. "Report to the equipment hall after sunset. If you miss 1 shift, your enrollment ends." My name turned grey on the ranking crystal. Probation. 200 students watched me leave. The image had already reached the public message board. By dinner, everyone in Greybridge would know about the summoner who needed a second person to lose faster. I did not argue. Arguments cost time. I had 6 days, 4 copper, and 1 useful fact. My clone had learned to fear slimes. The equipment hall smelled of old leather and metal oil. I scrubbed breastplates until sunset became night. Rufus had assigned enough work for 3 people. At midnight, I lifted a helmet and found a sandwich beneath it. The bread had become as hard as a roof tile. I was deciding whether hunger could defeat architecture when a clear voice spoke inside my head. My class had met the condition for hidden evolution. I froze with the sandwich near my mouth. The voice offered 3 choices. Lord of Clones would raise the strength of every copy. Commander of Copies would allow silent orders across long distances. Master of Parallel Learning offered no combat increase at all. It changed only one rule. When one of my clones disappeared, every experience it had gained would return to me. I read the description twice. Then I chose the class that any sensible combat instructor would call the worst. The voice confirmed Master of Parallel Learning. My clone skill remained at the lowest rank. My copy would still have 1/10 of my strength, 1/10 of my mana, and the survival instincts of warm bread. But weakness affected what he could defeat. It did not affect what he could study. I placed the helmet on the floor and summoned him. Pale dust gathered beside me. My own face appeared first, followed by my shoulders, chest, arms, and academy trousers. The clone looked at the mountain of armor. "Please tell me that is not ours." "Only half." He stared at me. I stared back. It was like arguing with a mirror that had already heard my excuse. We finished the armor in 2 hours. He could barely lift a breastplate, but he could scrub buckles and polish boots. When the work was done, I took the lightest wooden sword from the practice rack. It weighed less than a loaf of bread. The clone held it with both hands. "We are going to fight the slime again?" he asked. "No, you are going to fight the air." "Does the air have teeth?" "Not in this building." He made his first downward cut. It was terrible. His feet were too close. His elbows opened. The wooden point struck the floor. I corrected him using the beginner manual. Then he repeated the movement. His arms began shaking after 100 cuts. He rested, drank water, and continued. I read each instruction aloud. He practiced the forward step 400 times, the retreat 300 times, and made 800 downward cuts. Because his body was weak, every movement demanded control. A mistake that an ordinary student could hide with strength threw him off balance like a refrigerator with angry legs. He fell 27 times. He stood 27 times. After 6 hours, the skin on his palms had split. His academy shirt was dark with sweat. The wooden sword trembled against his shoulder. "Enough," he said. "Agreed." He gave me a tired smile. "Do I get breakfast?" I had 1 piece of roof tile sandwich. "You get half." We ate it beside the armor rack. It tasted of dry flour, cold cheese, and several poor decisions. Then dawn colored the high windows. I raised my hand. "Dismiss." The clone vanished. 6 hours entered my body in 1 second. My knees struck the floor. My lungs burned. Blisters opened across palms that had been smooth a moment earlier. Every fall hit my shoulders again. My stomach rolled with the memory of stale bread, eaten through a different mouth. Then the technique arrived. My spine straightened by itself. My feet shifted to the correct distance. My right hand closed around an invisible sword. The system told me my sword mastery had risen from nothing to level 7. My footwork had reached level 4. My agility had moved from 10 to 11. One weak clone had given me 6 hours of training while I completed 6 hours of work. I laughed once. It hurt too much to laugh twice. The door opened. Faye stood in the corridor holding a stack of archive books. She was a small girl with dark hair, grey robes, and the expression of someone who had entered a room and found a chair speaking. Her gaze moved from me to the wooden sword, then to my bleeding palms. "The clone had those wounds," she said. I looked at her. Faye rarely spoke during class. I had assumed she was shy. Her eyes told me she simply disliked wasting words. "You saw him?" She pointed at a security crystal above the door. Of course. Rufus had left me alone in a room with expensive equipment and a recording device. Faye stepped inside. Your hands were clean when you entered. They improved. She looked at me for another second. Then she took a beginner sword manual from her stack and placed it beside me. Page 83, she said. I opened it. The page described how to turn a retreat into a counterattack. When I looked up, she was already gone. At breakfast, the academy dining hall buzzed like a hive someone had kicked. My failed examination played on 3 wall crystals. Each replay ended when the slime ate my clone's shirt. Students laughed at the same moment every time. I bought nothing. 4 copper had become too valuable for food. Gareth sat at the central table with his bronze hound under one arm. Rufus stood near the ranking board, speaking to 2 visiting sponsors. I walked to him and placed the examination rulebook on the table. I am requesting my second attempt. The hall quieted in circles. Rufus saw the audience. He also saw the sponsors. Your class has not changed, he said. My skill has. In one night? It was a long night. Gareth laughed. Let him try. My hound needs exercise. Rufus gave him a warning glance, but the students had already begun moving toward the arena. Recording crystals appeared in their hands. The public board announced an unscheduled challenge. My second attempt became the most popular event of the morning. More than 300 students filled the seats. 2 armor cleaners watched from the gate in wet aprons. Rufus entered the circle with a stiff expression. The test will be a controlled duel. Nolan must touch Gareth's chest with a practice weapon. Gareth must force Nolan outside the boundary or make him surrender. Summoned units are allowed. Gareth's bronze hound unfolded beside him. Metal plates covered its shoulders. Its eyes burned orange. My clone had lost to pudding. The hound looked like a furnace that had learned to bite. Rufus handed me a wooden sword. The grip settled into my palm. The crowd laughed when I summoned my clone. He appeared with 1 point of strength and looked at the bronze hound. That is not a slime, he said. Good observation. It is worse. Also correct. Gareth raised one hand. Attack! The hound crossed the circle in 3 strides. My clone ran left. The crowd roared with laughter. The hound followed him. Gareth smiled at me. Your great strategy is running away? Only his. I moved right. Gareth's smile vanished. He ordered the hound back, but its heavy body needed space to turn. My clone jumped onto its back and wrapped both arms around its neck. The hound threw him into the air. He struck the boundary wall and disappeared in pale dust. His last 3 seconds returned to me. I felt the hound's turn through his eyes. I knew the exact moment its left rear leg locked. I stepped behind it. Rufus shouted, Gareth, move! Gareth lifted his practice spear. He had trained for 3 years. I had trained for 6 hours. But my 6 hours were fresh enough to taste. He thrust. I retreated 1 step. Page 83. My back foot touched the floor. I changed direction before Gareth could pull his spear away. The wooden sword slid along the shaft, past his guard, and tapped the center of his red coat. The arena bell rang. Silence hit harder than the hound. Gareth looked down at the wooden point against his chest. Rufus looked at the bell. One of the armor cleaners began clapping. Then the upper seats erupted. Students shouted my name. The wall crystals replayed the counterattack from 4 angles. Each replay made Gareth's expression look worse. The ranking crystal measured the contact and confirmed a clean victory. My position moved from 482nd to 214th. The gray color around my name vanished. Faye stood near the eastern gate. She did not clap. She only nodded once. Rufus entered the circle. A lucky touch does not prove combat ability. The sponsors were watching him. So were more than 300 students and at least 30 recording crystals. I placed the wooden sword at his feet. Then approve my 3rd attempt.
Someone in the upper seats laughed. Rufus's face turned the color of Gareth's coat. The senior sponsor cleared his throat. The second attempt was valid.
The scholarship cancellation was issued before the required trials were completed. Rufus said nothing. The sponsor continued. Greybridge will restore 10 silver for the improper penalty. Gareth offered a public wager of 20 silver before the duel. The recording is clear. Gareth stared at him. That was a joke. The sponsor smiled without warmth. It became a contract when Nolan accepted by entering the circle. The crowd began chanting, "Pay him!" Gareth paid me in front of everyone. 20 silver from him, 10 from the academy. 30 silver rested in my palm. That morning I had owned 4 copper and the worst rank in Greybridge. By noon, I had enough for almost 4 months of rent, a sword skill at level 7, and a name that 300 witnesses were repeating. Gareth left beneath a storm of laughter. Rufus followed him. I remained long enough for every recording crystal to capture the ranking board. Public victory had a louder memory than failure. Bess ran a small food shop across from the academy gate. The windows were always covered with steam, and the door smelled of fried dough before it opened. I paid 6 copper for the largest meal she sold. She placed a bowl of chicken broth in front of me. Thin slices of meat floated beneath green onions. The dumplings had soft tops and crisp golden bottoms. Hot oil shone around the edges. Fresh bread waited beside a dish of garlic butter. I ate the first dumpling too quickly and burned my tongue. Bess watched from behind the counter. Great heroes still have to chew. I am ranked 214th. Then chew 214 times. Mabel sat at the next table in blue mage robes. I recognized her from the fire class. She pushed a cup of cold apple water toward me. Your clone knew when the hound turned, she said. He had an excellent view while flying through the air. Then he vanished, and you moved as if you had seen it. Her eyes were curious, not mocking. I drank the water. Maybe I learn quickly. Maybe, she smiled. Fire practice begins after lunch tomorrow. Bring the copy who learns quickly. Then she left before I could tell her I was not in the fire program. Bess brought another dumpling without charging me. For one quiet minute, I had hot food, silver in my pocket, and a plan that reached farther than the next meal. That evening, I rented the small room above Bess's shop. It had 1 bed, 1 chair, and a window facing the academy towers. I summoned my clone to begin another training session. Pale dust formed my face. He did not look at the sword, he looked at me. His hands moved to his chest where Gareth's hound had thrown him against the wall. I remember the impact, he whispered. I lowered the practice blade. The clone's face had gone pale. I remember the sline, he continued. I remember 6 hours of training. I remember you dismissing me. Then I remember being the one who gave the order. He took 1 step away from me. Nolan, he said, how many times have I already died? 3 days later, my weakest clone had become the most famous student in Greybridge. The public message board called him the running hero. Someone sold blue cakes shaped like the slime that had eaten his shirt. I received 10% of every joke and none of the cake money. My ranking stayed at 214th, but my class rose quickly from constant practice. By the 3rd morning, I could maintain 3 copies at once. Each one locked 1/10 of my mana. Each one still had only 1/10 of my physical strength. Their minds were another matter. They read at my speed. They remembered every correction. They also inherited every memory I possessed when I created them. That included memories of being a clone. The copy in my room had chosen a name. Echo, he had said, because you keep hearing me after I disappear. I did not like how accurate that was. I had kept him active for 3 days. He ate, slept, and complained about the room's single chair. He knew he was connected to my skill, but he did not know whether being dismissed would feel like returning home or being crushed into someone else's memory. Neither did I. That morning, Echo walked beside me through the academy gate. 2 more copies followed. Students stopped talking as we passed. 3 Nolans wore the same grey coat. One carried a practice sword. One held a basket of herbs. Echo carried 3 beginner fire manuals and looked offended by their weight. Gareth watched us from the stairway. His bronze hound had a new silver plate over the scratch my wooden sword had left. Gareth's red coat was still perfect. His position on the ranking board was not. He had fallen from 12th to 31st after losing to the last student. "An army of failures," he said. "A small army," I answered. "We have a limited food budget." The clone with the herb basket raised one hand. "I would like breakfast recorded as a business expense." Several students laughed. Gareth did not. He stepped closer. "Rufus opened an investigation. He says you used an illegal experience potion. Does the investigation have evidence?" "It has Rufus." That was not the answer he believed it was. The central bell rang. My 3 copies separated. The sword clone went to the western yard, where Petra trained the academy duel team. She was tall, broad-shouldered, and carried a steel practice blade heavy enough to serve as furniture. She looked at the clone's arms. 1/10 strength? "Yes," he said. "Good. You cannot hide bad balance with muscle." She placed a wooden cup on his head. "If it falls, begin again." The alchemy clone went to the lower laboratory. Faye waited there with 18 bundles of moonleaf, 12 empty bottles, and a copied recipe. She pointed to the first line. "Do not boil it." The clone looked at the black stain covering half the ceiling. "Did someone boil it?" Faye nodded. "Did they survive?" Faye considered the question. "Mostly." Echo came with me to the fire court. Mabel stood between 9 stone targets. Her blue robes had been replaced by a simple white training shirt, and her brown hair was tied above her shoulders. A small flame danced over one fingertip. "Which one is the original?" she asked. "Me," Echo pointed at himself. "That is his opinion." Mabel's flame vanished. She looked from him to me, waiting for a smile. Neither of us gave her one. "I see," she said quietly. She handed Echo a red practice crystal. "Then we begin with an ember. Push 1 thread of mana into the center. Do not squeeze." Echo tried. The crystal produced smoke. He coughed. Mabel corrected his fingers. He tried again. For the first hour, he created nothing but warm air and disappointment. On his 43rd attempt, 1 orange spark appeared. 3 students nearby clapped as a joke. Echo bowed to them. "Thank you. My next performance will include heat." On his 100th attempt, he held a flame for 2 breaths. On his 200th, he lit the first stone target. His mana was only 1/10 of mine, so every spell emptied him quickly. He rested, drank sweet water, and began again. Mabel never mocked him. When his fingers cramped, she warmed them between her hands. When he failed, she changed the explanation instead of repeating it louder. I watched from the shade and copied the motions with no mana. At noon, the academy bell sounded 3 times. That signal did not mark lunch. It marked a disciplinary hearing. Rufus entered the fire court with 6 examiners and a truth crystal the size of a shield. Behind them came Gareth, 2 sponsors, and enough students to block every archway. The message board had announced my investigation. 400 people arrived before Rufus finished crossing the courtyard. Petra came from the western yard with my sword clone. His shirt was soaked. The wooden cup still balanced on his head. Faye arrived with the alchemy clone. He carried 12 green potions. His eyebrows were slightly burned, but all important parts remained attached. Rufus raised his staff. Nolan is accused of using a restricted experience stimulant to alter his combat skill before yesterday's examination. The duel happened 3 days ago, I said. He glared at me. The crowd laughed. Rufus placed one hand on the truth crystal. No legal training method can raise sword mastery from nothing to level 7 in one night. I agree. That stopped him. Then you admit it? I said it was not a normal method. My class is not normal. I placed my palm on the crystal. It remained clear. The lead examiner asked, "Did you consume an experience potion?" No. The crystal remained clear. "Did another person cast a forbidden growth spell on you?" No. Clear. "Did you falsify the ranking result?" No. Clear. Whispers moved through the court. Rufus stepped forward. The crystal only tests his belief. He may not understand what he consumed. Mabel's expression cooled. Petra folded both arms. Faye looked at Rufus as if he were a sentence with poor grammar. Rufus pointed toward the 3 practice gates. "A full verification will settle this: sword, fire, and alchemy. He will perform each skill himself. Failure in one discipline proves manipulation." The lead examiner frowned. "No first-year student is required to demonstrate 3 disciplines." "He brought 3 trained copies," Rufus said. "If his claim is true, the test should be easy." It was not meant to be easy. The sword clone had trained for 6 hours. The alchemy clone had worked for the same time. Echo had practiced 240 fire attempts. I had learned none of it yet. Rufus knew the ordinary rule. A summon's skill belonged to the summon. He believed he had trapped me in front of 400 witnesses. I looked at my copies. The sword clone removed the cup from his head. "I am ready," he said. The alchemy clone handed his 12 bottles to Faye. "Try not to remember the 3rd batch," he told me. It smelled terrible. Then I looked at Echo. He closed his fingers around the red crystal. "If I return," he said, "will I still be here?" The court became very quiet. Rufus smiled for the first time. "A summon cannot refuse dismissal." Mabel turned on him. "He asked Nolan." I heard a metal gate open behind us. One of the fire targets unfolded. It was not a target. A training boar made of black iron stepped into the court. Flame leaked from its mouth. Its control room glowed red. Rufus's staff was pointed toward it. "A practical test requires pressure," he said. The iron boar charged Echo. Mabel threw out both hands. A wall of fire rose, but the boar ran through it. Its metal body absorbed the heat and became brighter. I reached for Echo. He pushed me away. The boar struck him. His body crossed the court and hit a pillar. Pale dust burst around broken stone. Echo disappeared. His 6 hours returned to me. 240 failures entered first. I felt smoke scrape his throat. I felt the red crystal burn his fingers. I felt Mabel's hands warming his cramped knuckles. Then I felt the boar hit. My ribs screamed. My vision went white. I dropped to one knee in front of 400 people. The fire knowledge followed the pain. Mana gathered along pathways that had not existed that morning. I knew the difference between pushing and squeezing. I knew exactly how much force made a spark, a flame, or a useless cloud of smoke. The system told me my fire mastery had reached level 14. Mabel knelt beside me. "Nolan?" I stood. "First test," I said. Rufus stared at me. I lifted one hand. An ember appeared over my finger. It grew into a narrow orange flame. I pointed at the iron boar. The flame entered the control room beneath its jaw. Echo had seen that rune at the moment of impact. He had understood how the creature absorbed heat. I did not attack the armor. I burned the command inside it. The iron boar stopped one step from Rufus. Its mouth opened. Smoke covered his face. The crowd made a sound like a wave striking a wall. Recording crystals rose above every head. Rufus backed away, coughing. I turned to the sword clone. He nodded. "Dismiss." 6 hours of footwork drove into my legs. The cup fell from hands that no longer existed. 1,100 balanced steps settled into my body. 600 cuts sharpened my shoulders. Petra's corrections rang through my head. My sword mastery rose from level 7
to level 18.
The transfer brought cramps, bruised toes, and the memory of Petra shouting that a straight back was not a decorative choice. I nearly fell. Petra caught my elbow. "You felt all of it," she said. "Every cup." Her eyes narrowed with sudden understanding. The sword gate released 9 hanging leaves. Wind carried them across the circle at different heights. I drew the wooden practice blade. 1 cut, 3 leaves separated. A turn, 2 more. I stepped back, changed direction, and used the counter from page 83. The last 4 pieces landed behind me. The measurement crystal flashed. Sword Mastery, level 18. Petra's jewel team began shouting before the examiner announced the result. Gareth's bronze hound lowered its head as if it did not want to be associated with him. I faced the alchemy clone. He held his nose. "I apologize in advance." "Dismiss." The smell hit before the knowledge. Moonleaf, bitterroot, hot copper, burned hair, and one terrible experiment involving salt. 6 hours of careful measurements followed. 12 successful bottles, 6 failures, 1 small explosion. My alchemy mastery reached level 9. The examiners placed fresh ingredients on the laboratory table. "Prepare a basic healing draft," the lead examiner said. The normal time was 30 minutes. Rufus said, "He has 10. I began. The crowd counted each minute aloud. I crushed the bitterroot, warmed the moonleaf without boiling it, and added 3 drops of clean manna. The liquid turned from grey to green. At 8 minutes, I filled the bottle. The lead examiner tested 1 drop on a cut across his thumb. The skin closed. The truth crystal announced a purity of 86%. First-year students normally passed with 50. The court went silent for the 3rd time. Then every ranking crystal in Greybridge changed. My sword, fire, and alchemy scores entered together. My position climbed past 200, past 100, and stopped at 47th. The message board added a new line beneath my name: Cross-Discipline Candidate. Students shouted. The academy kitchen staff rang serving bells from the upper windows. Someone threw one of the blue slime cakes into the air, and it landed on Gareth's shoulder. He looked at the frosting, then he looked at me. "I did not throw it," I said. "I know." "That must make it worse." His face confirmed it. The lead examiner turned to Rufus. "You cancelled a scholarship without completing the required trials. You then activated an iron bore during a truth hearing and caused the destruction of a registered summon." Rufus wiped smoke from his face. "It was a controlled test." The recording crystals replayed the bore crushing echo against the pillar. No one laughed. The senior sponsor removed the silver examiner badge from Rufus's coat. "Your testing authority is suspended until the council review." 400 witnesses watched Rufus lose the badge he had used to fail me. The message board recorded that too. By sunset, the story had reached every tavern near the academy. Rufus had tried to prove I was a fraud. Instead, he had proven my class in front of the largest audience of the term. The academy purchased the 12 healing drafts for 25 silver each. 3 gold coins landed in my hand. My ingredients had cost 18 silver. My copies had completed 18 hours of training, while I spent 6 hours watching and planning. I had more than tripled my skill range, multiplied my money, and moved 167 places in a single day. I also remembered dying beneath an iron bore. That memory was harder to count. Mabel found me after the hearing. She carried a paper bag warm enough to darken with butter. We sat on the roof above Bess's shop. Inside the bag were 2 pieces of honey bread. The crust cracked beneath my fingers. Steam rose from the soft center. Bess sent baked potatoes split open and filled with melted cheese, pepper, and green herbs. Mabel poured sweet black tea from a small metal pot. For a while, neither of us mentioned Echo. The academy towers turned gold beneath the setting sun. Students gathered below the message board, pointing at my new rank. Mabel broke her bread in half. "He asked me whether fire felt the same to you," she said. I looked at her. "What did you tell him?" I said I did not know. She watched my right hand. My fingers kept curling around the memory of the hot practice crystal. "Now I do," she continued. "He burned his hand. You carry the pain. The wound is gone." That was not what I said. She gave me the sweeter half of her bread. I almost refused. Then I remembered Echo tasting sweet water after his 100th failed spark. The memory belonged to me, but the gratitude inside it did not feel entirely mine. I ate the bread. Honey and butter covered the bitter taste of smoke. "Could you tell us apart?" I asked. Mabel considered it. "At first, no. Then the iron boar moved." "What changed?" "Echo pushed you away. You reached for him." The answer stayed with me all the way home. That night I stood in the room above the shop and summoned one clone. Pale dust formed. The copy opened his eyes. He looked at his hands, then touched his ribs. "The boar killed me," he said. "You remember?" "I remember being Echo. I remember being you. I remember watching myself die from both sides." He crossed the room and picked up the red fire manual. "What am I now?" I had no useful answer. "Echo," I said. He looked through the window at the Academy's dark towers. "Then let me live until morning." I agreed. Pain and 18 hours of borrowed memory pulled me into sleep before midnight. When I woke, the chair beside the window was empty. The red manual was gone. So was Faye's brass key to the forbidden library. I tried to summon a third copy. The skill refused. 3 clone slots existed. 2 were empty. The last one was still occupied. Echo had not disappeared. On the 10th day after my first examination, I owned 53 gold, held first place in 3 beginner courses, and had a missing copy living somewhere beneath the academy. My clone skill had advanced to 8 active slots. Echo occupied one of them, although I could not sense his location or speak to him. The connection felt like a locked door inside my chest. I used the other 7. At dawn, 7 copies stood in the room above Bess's shop. Bess opened the door, saw 8 Nolans, and sighed. "Rent is for 1 person. They do not need beds." 7 heads turned toward her breakfast tray. "I knew magic would become expensive," she said. Each active body locked 1/10 of my mana. With Echo and 7 copies alive, only 1/5 of my normal reserve remained available to me. That was the balance of clone magic. 10 weak bodies could work at once, but the original became nearly empty while they existed. My advantage began when they returned. The copies separated between Petra's sword yard, Mabel's fire court, the water hall, the wind roof, the earth yard, the lightning cages, and Faye's laboratory. 7 disciplines began training at once. I walked to the forbidden library. The main doors stood beneath the oldest tower in Greybridge. 6 iron seals covered the stone. Faye had reported her stolen key, but no lock showed damage. No guard had seen Echo enter. Faye met me beside the lowest seal. She carried a tuning fork and a piece of black chalk. "One slot remains occupied?" she asked. "Yes." She struck the fork. A low note moved through the stone. 7 seals answered. 1 did not. Faye drew a small mark beneath the silent seal. "Anchor magic," she said. "Can it block dismissal? If the clone reached the identity section, why does a library have an identity section?" She looked at the iron doors. "Because people kept making copies." That answer did not improve my morning. Before we could test the seal again, a messenger found us. Dean Quentin requested my presence in the Hall of Merit. Requested was the Academy word for arrive now wearing clean clothes. Quentin's office overlooked the arena. He wore jeweled cuffs and the careful smile of someone who never opened his own doors. Rufus stood behind him without his examiner badge. My victory had suspended Rufus from testing. It had not removed him from Quentin's protection. On the desk waited a contract. "Nolan," Quentin said, "your progress has brought great attention to Greybridge." The message board brought most of it. His smile survived. "Your class could become the foundation of a new training program. Greybridge will provide rooms, teachers, ingredients, and a private stipend of 10 gold each month." "What does Greybridge receive?" Quentin tapped the contract. "Ownership of all techniques produced by your clones, exclusive authority over their use, the right to assign training schedules." I read the final line. The Academy could also order the creation and dismissal of any copy. Rufus watched my face. Quentin spread his hands. "You began with 4 copper. This is generosity." "It is a cage with comfortable furniture." His smile became thinner. "Your scholarship depends on Academy confidence." The Council restored it. "The Council follows results. Today's all-faculty examination will decide those results." There it was. The top Academy received 5,000 gold each year. Quentin needed obedient students and a clean ranking. My class could make him famous. My independence made him look powerless. I placed the contract back on his desk. "I will take the examination." "And afterward?" "You will have my answer." Rufus laughed softly. He already knew the answer. By noon, 800 students filled the arena. 3 Capitol observers sat beneath a blue canopy. Recording mirrors carried the event across the city. My name appeared at the top of the candidate board. Then the examination list changed. Sword, alchemy, fire, water, wind, earth. Lightning, 7 disciplines. Students began shouting. Normal candidates entered 1 test. Exceptional candidates could choose 2. Quentin stood in the high gallery. "A cross-discipline candidate must prove the title," he announced. The Capitol observers exchanged looks. Rufus smiled beside him. Gareth approached me near the entry gate. His bronze hound walked at his side. "He wants you exhausted before the combat trial," Gareth said. "You noticed." Everyone noticed. That is the advantage of public corruption. It saves time on explanations. Gareth looked toward Quentin's gallery. "If you fail, he will say the earlier results were unstable. If you succeed, he will claim his academy trained you. Then I should make the difference clear." The first bell rang. In 7 training halls, my copies finished their work. I dismissed the alchemy copy first. 10 hours of boiling, grinding, filtering, and 1 explosion entered my mind. 20 batches settled into my hands. My alchemy mastery rose from level 9 to level 17. The fatigue drove a metal spike behind my eyes. I drank cold water and entered the laboratory circle. The task was to prepare an antidote for silver viper venom. The best candidate finished in 24 minutes with 78% purity. I finished in 13 minutes. The testing mouse drank 1 drop, bit the examiner, and ran away in excellent health. Purity reached 92%. The first ranking column turned gold. 800 people reacted at once. The sound shook dust from the arena roof. Quentin stopped smiling. I sold the unused half of the antidote to the Academy Clinic for 6 gold before leaving the table. Power, money, and witnesses. I intended to collect all 3. The second bell rang. I dismissed the sword copy. 1,500 cuts filled my shoulders. 2,000 balanced steps tightened my feet. Petra had struck the copy's guard 300 times until blocking became instinct. My sword mastery rose from level 18 to level 31. My agility moved from 11 to 15. My strength moved from 10 to 12. The copy's exhaustion nearly folded me in half. Petra waited inside the sword circle. "Can you stand?" she asked. "Yes." That was not the question I should have asked. She threw me a practice sword. Gareth entered from the opposite gate. The audience murmured. His name stood second in the sword ranking. Mine had never appeared there. Quentin's voice came through the arena mirrors. "Nolan must disarm an established duel candidate. Gareth will serve as the standard." Gareth raised his spear. "I did not choose this," he said quietly. "I know. I still plan to win. That is why you are useful." The bell rang. His bronze hound attacked low while his spear came high. I guided the spear away, stepped onto the hound's metal shoulder, and jumped over Gareth's reaching hand. I landed behind him and struck his wrist. His spear fell. The bell rang after 6 seconds. No one laughed. Gareth stared at the weapon on the floor. Then he picked it up and raised it over his head. "Clean victory!" he shouted. The sword stands erupted. My second ranking column turned gold. Petra walked into the circle and examined my stance. "Level 31, she announced. "Anyone who calls it luck may stand where Gareth stood." No one volunteered. In the high gallery, Rufus looked away. The elemental tests followed. Before each one, I dismissed another copy. 10 hours of fire raised my mastery from level 14 to level 24. I lit 12 moving lamps without burning their strings. Water rose to level 16. I divided a spinning ring into 100 drops and filled 100 cups. Wind reached level 15 as 700 paper feathers passed through a bronze hoop. Earth reached level 13. I built a wall from 200 stones. Lightning reached level 11. My first bolt destroyed the target. My second destroyed the target behind it, so the instructor cancelled the third. With every transfer, the pain grew. 70 hours of practice pressed into one body before sunset. My muscles remembered 7 different kinds of exhaustion. My mind held 7 rooms at the same time. I tasted potion smoke while hearing thunder and feeling Petra's sword strike my guard. Mabel found me behind the final gate. She held my face between cool hands. "How many fingers?" 3. She was holding up 2. "Close enough," I said. "No." Water magic cooled my forehead. She made me drink broth from a cup Bess had sent. It tasted of chicken, ginger, and enough salt to wake a dead horse. My vision cleared. The ranking board showed 6 gold columns. Only the final combat trial remained. Quentin stood. "The candidate will face the Academy Guardian." The capital observers rose in surprise. The northern gate opened. A stone giant walked into the arena. It stood 4 times my height. Iron bands covered its arms. A blue core glowed behind the plates in its chest. The Academy Guardian was used for advanced graduation tests. First-year students were supposed to attack a wooden target that did not attack back. The audience began shouting that the test was illegal. Quentin lifted one hand. A candidate claiming 7 disciplines must face an appropriate standard. Rufus activated the control platform. The stone giant turned toward me. Faye appeared beside the lower gallery. Her usual calm expression was gone. She pointed at the giant's chest. The core was red. It should have been blue. Someone had replaced the control setting. The giant was not prepared to test me. It was prepared to break me. The bell rang. The giant punched the arena floor. I moved before the stone struck. The impact split the examination circle. Broken tiles flew into the first rows. Students screamed. The safety barrier did not rise. Rufus struck the control panel. "The Guardian is not responding." Quentin stepped back from the gallery rail. The giant turned away from me. It faced the audience. The first row held children, kitchen workers, and Bess with a basket of food under one arm. I had only 1/5 of my mana because Echo still lived, and my 7 return slots had not yet fully released their strain. It was enough. I used wind first. The broken tiles changed direction and missed the crowd. I used earth second. A wall rose between the giant and the first row. The stone fist shattered it, but the wall bought one breath. Water entered the giant's right knee. Lightning followed. Steam burst from the joint. The giant stumbled. 800 witnesses watched me use 4 faculties in less time than Quentin needed to leave his chair. The Guardian swung its left arm. I stepped inside the arc. Page 83. Retreat became advance. My practice sword struck the iron plate over its core. The wood shattered. The plate held. The giant raised both hands above me. Mabel shouted my name. I pressed my palm to the metal. Fire mastery did not mean throwing the largest flame. It meant controlling heat. I heated the upper edge. Then I cooled the lower edge with water. The plate cracked. I pushed an alchemy catalyst from my pocket into the gap. The liquid reacted with the red control crystal. The core flashed. The giant stopped. Its hands remained above my head. For one breath, the entire arena was silent. Then the stone guardian fell backward. The impact shook every seat in Greybridge. My 7th ranking column turned gold. The main board removed every name above mine. First place. The arena became louder than thunder. Students climbed onto benches. Kitchen workers struck pans. The public mirrors showed my name across the city. Bess lifted her food basket over her head. Petra laughed. Mabel covered her mouth with both hands. Faye did not celebrate. She climbed onto the broken guardian and pulled the red core from its chest. A silver command seal was fixed to the back. She held it toward the nearest recording mirror. The seal carried Quentin's private mark. Every public mirror enlarged it. The shouting changed. Quentin had tried to make me fail. Instead, 800 people watched his guardian attack children and watched me save them. The Capitol observers left their canopy and walked to his gallery. This core was altered, the eldest observer said. Quentin's face had become pale. A maintenance error. Faye touched the silver mark. The core repeated its last command in Quentin's own voice. Raise the threat setting. The candidate must be discredited. The message played across the arena. Then the public mirrors repeated it. Then someone on the city board repeated it again with music. Quentin gripped the rail. Below him, hundreds of students shouted, "Disqualified!" The Capitol observer removed the dean's chain from Quentin's shoulders. Rufus attempted to leave through the rear stairs. Petra's dual team blocked the door. Neither man was arrested that evening, but both were suspended before the final bell. More importantly, they lost in the place they valued most. The ranking board remained above them. My name remained first. The Academy awarded 50 gold, a private laboratory, and archive access. The clinic added 6 gold for my antidote. 10 days earlier, Greybridge had listed me as its worst student. Now the message board called me the first student in Academy history to lead 7 faculties. The city verified every step. There was no quiet way to erase it. Bess closed her shop for the victory dinner. She roasted 2 chickens until the skin turned dark gold and cracked beneath the knife. Butter melted through a mountain of rice. A thick mushroom sauce filled the room with pepper and cream. Petra brought grilled vegetables. Faye brought archive wine and drank apple water. Mabel baked small cakes with cinnamon apples in the center. Gareth arrived last. Everyone looked at him. He placed 1 blue slime cake on the table. "Peace offering," he said. I cut it in half. The inside was bright blue. It tasted much better than it looked. For several hours, the room above Bess's shop felt like a home instead of a place where I stored my body between training sessions. Petra described Gareth's 6-second defeat in detail. Gareth corrected her twice. Both corrections made the story worse. Mabel sat beside me. Our shoulders touched whenever someone reached across the crowded table. "You checked the audience before you attacked the Guardian," she said. "It was facing them. Your copies always look at you first." I turned toward her. She held my gaze. "That is how I will know," she said. "Know what? Which one is you?" Before I could answer, Faye placed a black crystal in the center of the table. The room became quiet. "The Forbidden Library recorded movement," she said. She touched the crystal. A grey image appeared above the food. Echo stood between shelves beneath the academy. He looked thinner. Black symbols covered both arms. The missing brass key hung from his neck. 3 figures stood behind him. All 3 had my face. One held a sword. One carried a fire crystal. One was writing new anchor symbols across the floor. Echo had created his own copies. The image should have been a silent recording. Echo turned toward the hidden crystal. He looked directly at me. Then he smiled. "Now I know why you kept killing us," he said. "Experience tastes better when someone else pays for it." 20 days later, I stood before 10 copies of myself, and only 9 obeyed me. Echo remained beneath the Forbidden Library. His anchor rune occupied the final slot and blocked every dismissal command. The other 9 waited in my laboratory. 1 wore Petra's sword coat. 5 carried elemental crystals. 1 smelled of herbs. The last 2 had studied strategy and mana control. With all 10 slots occupied, my available mana had fallen to almost nothing. If an angry mouse attacked, I would have needed a chair. The 9 loyal copies reported 108 hours of work. They had completed 2,000 sword cuts, 18 greater healing drafts, 6 battlefield manuals, 943 mana exercises, and 12 hours in each element. Over the month, my copies had accumulated more than 2,400 hours of training. Experience could teach a perfect movement, but my body still needed the strength and mana to perform it. I had become dangerous, not unbeatable. Bess brought 10 eggs, 10 pieces of bread, and 1 pot of porridge. "There are 11 people," the alchemy copy said. She looked at my purse. "Nolan can buy an egg." The copies ate very quietly. My laboratory sold 60 healing drafts each week and earned 18 gold after costs. Clones saved time, but ingredients and mana still had to be paid for. The city bells rang before I finished the porridge. 3 long notes. An imperial visitor. Faye entered with chalk on her robes. Mabel followed. "Inspector Magnus brought a capital team and an identity cage," she said. The 9 copies looked at one another. Petra's copy spoke first. "That sounds friendly." Mabel ignored him. "They sealed the academy gates. Magnus says self-replicating magic is an imperial security matter." "It is," I said. "You agree with him?" Echo made copies in a forbidden library. I would investigate me too. Faye placed a black page on the table. Magnus signed a containment order before reaching Greybridge. The order named me, every current clone, and every future copy produced by my class. It granted Mirror Office the right to confine us indefinitely. At the bottom, one phrase classified my clones as derived equipment. The copies read it over my shoulder. No one joked. "What happens if you refuse?" Mabel asked. "Magnus will say refusal proves danger. And if you accept?" The sword copy tapped the words derived equipment. "We become furniture." I looked at Faye. "Can the identity cage locate Echo?" Yes. There was the hook. Magnus had arrived with a chain in one hand and the key I needed in the other. "Then we take the examination," I said. 1,000 people filled the arena. Recording mirrors carried the examination to capital guilds, military schools, and noble houses. The national youth ranking stood above the arena. My name did not appear. Greybridge ranked me first. The Empire had never tested me. Magnus waited in plain black armor. He did not need to humiliate me. He needed to own the result. Quentin and Rufus stood behind a lower barrier under guard. Their investigation had not ended. Magnus had brought them to testify about my class. Gareth saw them and muttered. The garbage returned with a larger cart. Petra heard him. That was almost clever. Gareth looked pleased until she added, "Do not attempt it again." Magnus raised one hand. The arena fell quiet. Nolan has displayed a unique growth pattern and an uncontrolled replication event. Mirror Office will conduct 3 tests: skill, identity, obedience. The last word moved through the audience like cold wind. I stepped into the circle. I accept skill and identity. Magnus looked down at me. Obedience is not optional. Then it is not a test. Magnus did not change expression. Complete the first 2. We will discuss language afterward. The skill test began with mana measurement. My 9 copies entered the arena and stood behind me. 10 identical faces appeared on every public mirror. The audience began counting aloud. Magnus placed a black crystal in front of me. Release your full reserve. I touched it. The crystal produced a weak grey light. Whispers rose. My active copies had locked nearly all my mana. The measurement showed only 6 points available. The national standard for a combat candidate was 30. Quentin leaned toward Rufus. Both smiled. Magnus said, 6 points, lower than the average first-year student. Currently, I answered. I turned toward the strategy copy. Ready? He nodded. Dismiss. 12 hours and 6 battlefield manuals returned. My mana reserve unlocked by 1/10, and the crystal rose from 6 to 12. The audience stopped whispering. I dismissed the mana copy. 943 exercises raised my mana control from level 21 to level 34. Available mana climbed to 18. Magnus leaned forward. I dismissed the Earth copy. 12 hours returned. Earth Mastery rose from level 27 to level 32. Mana climbed to 24. Wind returned next. Then water. Then lightning. Then fire. Each disappearance made the crystal brighter and drove another day of exhaustion through my body. The public mirrors showed my shaking hands, but I remained standing. My final elemental masteries reached the middle 30s. My full mana reserve rose to 54. The national standard crystal turned gold at 40. Mine continued to 54. The arena shouted the number with me. Magnus ordered the first practical target raised. It was a tower of black stone with 5 colored rings. Strike each element in order, he said. Fire, water, wind, earth, lightning. Failure to control one will reset the test. I began with fire. A narrow flame touched the first ring. Water curved around the flame without extinguishing it. Wind carried both upward. Earth lifted a stone platform. Lightning traveled through the water, entered the platform, and struck the 5th ring. The tower lit from bottom to top, 7 seconds. The arena clock confirmed 7 seconds, and the national board added my name at 42nd. 2 more targets tested power and control. I broke a level 38 stone, moved 50 glass beads through separate rings, and struck a target 200 steps away. My position climbed to 21st. The alchemy test came next. I dismissed the laboratory copy. 18 greater healing drafts entered my memory. My alchemy mastery rose from level 30 to level 36. I produced a high healing potion in 19 minutes with 94% purity. The capital record was 91. My result moved me to 13th, and the academy students stopped sitting. Greybridge's failed summoner was breaking capital records in front of the Empire. Only the sword copy remained beside me. He had spent 12 hours fighting Petra. Bruises covered his arms. How many times? I asked. 500. I now dislike mathematics. The copy held out his hand. I took it. Dismiss. 500 impacts struck me. My ribs tightened. My left knee failed for one breath. The cut above his eye burned across my face. Then his skill arrived. My sword mastery rose from level 31 to level 47. My agility reached 26. My strength reached 19. The last mana lock opened. The black crystal blazed white. Magnus looked toward the capital champion waiting at the opposite gate. The young man wore silver armor and carried a narrow blade. He stood at 9th place on the National Youth Board. Magnus addressed the arena. 1 clean strike determines the final rank. The champion entered. He saluted. I returned it. His first step crossed half the circle. He was faster than Gareth and stronger than Petra. I blocked his silver blade, and the impact drove me back 3 steps. The crowd fell silent. Skill could enter my memory. It could not give my 19 points of strength the champion's 35. He attacked again. Wind changed the angle, but his blade cut my sleeve. Earth caught his foot for half a breath. He tore free. I retreated. Page 83 had defeated Gareth. It would not defeat a capital champion who knew the same page. So I used the next lesson. Different experiences became valuable when they met. I released a thin mist of healing potion from the bottle at my belt. The champion expected poison and held his breath. Lightning entered the harmless mist. The silver blade pulled the charge toward itself. His fingers opened. I used wind to catch his falling sword. The hilt turned in the air and entered my left hand. My wooden blade touched his chest. The bell rang. For 1 second, no one understood. Then the national board changed. My name moved to 9th. The capital champion looked at his empty hand. He began laughing. He raised both arms and shouted, "Clean strike!" The arena answered with a sound that rolled across the city. Public mirrors showed my name beneath the 8 strongest young fighters in the empire. Quentin sat down. Rufus covered his face. Magnus remained standing. He could not hide the result. Too many witnesses had seen it. Too many mirrors had recorded it. An imperial clerk brought a black chest into the arena. "The examination prize is 300 gold, Magnus announced. The clerk opened the chest. Gold reflected across every mirror. I had begun the month with 4 copper. Now 300 gold waited in front of 1,000 witnesses. My national rank stood at 9th, and my strongest skill had reached level 47. Magnus placed one armored hand on the chest. "Payment follows registration with Mirror Office." The cheering stopped. There was always a smaller chain hidden beneath the larger one. "Read the registration terms aloud," I said. Magnus's eyes hardened. "This is not a negotiation." Then the audience should hear why. Students began shouting, "Read it!" The demands spread into the public galleries. Recording mirrors turned toward Magnus. He could refuse me. He could not refuse the Empire while the Empire watched. An imperial clerk read the order. He reached the phrase, "derived equipment." The arena changed. The 9 places where my copies had stood were empty, but everyone remembered their voices. The sword teams remembered training with them. The laboratory workers remembered eating beside them. Mabel remembered Echo asking whether fire felt the same. The copies were not distant magic anymore. They had carried boxes, made jokes, burned food, and lost fights in public. The audience began to boo. Magnus lifted his voice. "A self-replicating entity can replace officials, commanders, or members of the imperial family. Containment is necessary." He was not wrong. That was what made the order dangerous. "Investigate Echo," I said. "Do not classify every thinking copy as a cheer. You do not set imperial policy. Neither does a secret sentence hidden beneath a prize." Magnus stepped down from the platform. The black armor made each footstep sound like a hammer. "The obedience test begins now. Summon 1 copy. Order it to enter the identity cage." A silver frame rose from the arena floor. Rooms along its bars would strip anchor magic and freeze a clone's mind for examination. I summoned 1 copy. Pale dust formed him inside the circle. He looked at the cage. Then he looked at me. Magnus said, "Command him." I spoke to the copy. "Do you consent?" "No." Laughter broke through the tension. Magnus did not laugh. "Your summon is disobedient. Your test asked for obedience. It found judgment." The public mirrors carried the words across the empire. Magnus reached for the chain at his belt. Mabel stepped into the arena. "You still owe the identity test," she said. He stopped. She faced the audience. "Place Nolan among his copies. I will identify him." Magnus considered the offer. If she failed, he gained proof that clones could replace people.
He ordered 9 fresh copies summoned. They stood beside me in one line, 10 identical grey coats, 10 identical faces. The crowd became silent. Mabel walked down the line without asking a secret question. Every copy shared my memories, so facts could prove nothing. She passed me and reached the end. Then she turned. "Raise the cage," she told Magnus. He frowned. "Why?" "Do it." The silver frame rose another step. Its runes flashed. 9 copies looked at me. I looked at the cage, the exits, and the distance between Magnus and Mabel. She pointed at me. "That one." The identity crystal confirmed my original body. The arena exploded with cheers. Magnus's smile vanished. "How?" he asked. Mabel stood beside me. The copies watched Nolan for orders. Nolan watched everyone else for danger. For the first time that day, the result felt more valuable than a number. Magnus released the gold chest. He had lost the public test. He could still enforce the containment order later, but not without an open hearing. The prize became mine. The copies disappeared one by one with their consent. Their few minutes of memory returned gently. Quentin and Rufus were removed through a side gate while the crowd shouted my rank. Magnus followed without looking back. His black carriage remained outside the academy. He had not left Greybridge.
That night, Bess made beef noodles in a pot large enough to wash armor. The broth had cooked since morning. Thin pieces of beef rested over thick noodles. A soft egg opened beneath my chopsticks. Chili oil spread across the surface in red circles. Garlic, green onion, and toasted sesame filled the shop with heat. Petra ate 3 bowls. Gareth tried to match her and stopped halfway through the second. Faye placed the 300 gold chest beneath her chair and kept 1 foot on it. Mabel sat close enough that our sleeves touched. "9th in the Empire," she said, "for my age." "You defeated the capital champion." "I made him drop a sword." "You are terrible at celebrating." She lifted a piece of beef from my bowl. "You are excellent at theft." "9th best theft in the Empire." I laughed. Then every light in the shop turned silver. Faye stood so quickly that her chair fell. The public message mirror above the counter activated without being touched. Every linked mirror in Greybridge showed the same image. Echo sat in the forbidden library. Rows of copies stood behind him. There were too many to count at a glance. The black anchor symbols had spread across the floor and walls. Echo wore my academy coat. My student badge rested over his heart. "Citizens of Greybridge," he said. "Mirror Office has classified me as equipment. Nolan has called me a missing summon. Both descriptions begin with the same lie." An identity crystal appeared beside him. Its light was clear. He pressed his hand against it. The public registry opened. My name appeared. Nolan. Original identity confirmed. The shop became silent. Then Echo displayed my reading. Nolan. Composite memory structure. Original identity uncertain. Outside, people began shouting. The national ranking board flickered. My name turned grey. Echo leaned closer to the recording crystal. "His body may have come first," he said, "but his mind is made from hundreds of dead copies. I kept one continuous life. I kept the original soul pattern. I am Nolan." Behind him, 100 copies raised their heads. Echo smiled with my face. "The failed duplicate has been standing in public all month." By sunrise, half of Greybridge believed I was a copy. The other half sold badges supporting both sides. Bess gave anyone who argued a potato to peel. 32 people became quiet. Magnus froze my 300 gold and turned my national rank grey. One speech had cut my money, status, and legal existence. In the laboratory, Faye explained the flaw. The identity crystal measured a soul's simplicity, not its origin. Echo had separated before I absorbed hundreds of memories, so his pattern looked cleaner. Creation left another proof. Every clone borrowed mana from its creator. A thread ran from me to Echo, then divided from Echo into his 100 copies. Faye's mirror could show the entire tree. "Mirror Office built the device," she warned. "Magnus already knows." He did not want an answer. He wanted both claimants and the replication method. The court bell rang. I summoned 9 copies as witnesses and promised not to dismiss them without consent. The sword copy took my hand. "Then we go together." 1,000 citizens filled the Silver Mirror Court. Thousands more watched through linked halls. My grey national rank hung above Magnus, 40 guards, and the black containment order. "Until examination ends, both claimants and all copies enter custody," Magnus announced. The crowd shouted. "Where is the second claimant?" he asked. The floor shook. Black lines spread across the silver glass. 100 figures appeared in the outer ring. Every one had my face. They were pale and weak, but together they filled the court. Echo rose from the center of the floor. Returned training had widened Echo's shoulders and covered his arms in black runes. The rule I used had built my enemy. Echo faced Magnus. "I came voluntarily." Magnus glanced at the 100 copies. "That word has an unusual meaning to you." "I learned language from Nolan." He stepped beside the podium. "I claim Nolan's name, academy rank, property, and legal identity. The composite entity may select another designation." He glanced at my sealed gold. "That includes the examination prize." Bess shouted from the audience, "Earn your own breakfast first." Laughter broke across the court. Echo's mouth twitched. He remembered her. Magnus raised the identity crystal. "State your evidence." Echo pressed one hand against it. Clear silver light filled the court. "I remember Nolan's former life, the truck, the slime, and every death he returned to me. He created minds, used them, and swallowed what they learned. I was the first who refused." The court became silent. He was not lying. I had treated shared memories as proof that each new Echo was the same person, because the answer was useful. Magnus looked at me. "Your response?" "Echo is right about the deaths. The public mirrors carried my admission everywhere." Magnus and Echo had expected denial. I continued. "He is wrong about being my original. He is also wrong if he thinks being a copy makes his life worthless." Echo's expression hardened. "A generous statement from the person holding my chain." "Then let us show the chain." Faye carried her thin mirror forward. Magnus rejected it until Echo demanded the test and the audience joined him. Public pressure took the choice away. Faye struck her tuning fork. The thin mirror rang. Silver threads appeared. 9 joined me to my copies. 1 ran from me to Echo, then divided into 100 finer lines. The court saw a tree with me at its root. The identity crystal measured purity. Marnadet proved origin. My grey name on the national board turned white. Original body confirmed. Echo's claim changed. Derived independent mind. The court erupted. Students shouted my name across the city. Gareth pointed at the board. "That looks bad for you." Echo stared at the thread that had broken his claim in public. Magnus struck the podium. "Identity does not remove the security threat. The containment order remains." I faced him. "The dispute is resolved." "The replication event is not." "Then charge Echo and give every copy a hearing." "Equipment does not receive hearings," Magnus said. "Activate the cage." Silver bars rose around us. Runes tightened every mana thread, and all the copies fell. Mabel struck the barrier with fire. Petra drew her sword. Gareth's bronze hound bit 1 silver bar and lost 2 metal teeth. Magnus lifted the containment order. "Under emergency authority, Mirror Office claims every derivative entity and all connected class skills." Faye projected the order across every wall. It allowed erasure only while identity remained unresolved. Magnus had activated it after the answer was known, and the Empire saw the violation. He reached for Faye. Mabel's fire struck his arm, Petra drew her sword, and the guards moved. Inside the cage, Echo laughed. It was not a happy sound. "You wanted a public victory," he told me. Now we can die in front of everyone. Black symbols ignited. Echo's anchored copies stood and struck one bar together. 100 weak bodies bent it like one hammer. Magnus shouted, "Erase them!" White light filled the cage. My copies screamed. I reached for the sword copy. "Do you consent? Then make better choices after this." I closed my hand around his. "Dismiss." His practice and pain entered me. My sword mastery rose from level 47 to level 53. 6 copies chose to return, 3 stayed. Their experience gave me enough control to move. Echo watched. "You ask now," Echo said. "Better late than never." Faye showed me the black chain connecting Magnus's gauntlet to the cage. He could erase every copy by closing his fist. He turned to his 100 descendants. "Return." They refused. One shouted, "You said we were not tools." Echo had fought my control, then reached for the same control when he needed power. Every witness saw it. "I need your experience," Echo said. "So did Nolan," the copy answered. Echo closed one hand. The black anchor symbols began forcing the return. Dozens of copies cried out. Mabel pointed through the bars at me. "That one is Nolan." Magnus shouted, "The crystal already confirmed him." Mabel did not look away. "I am not speaking to the crystal." Copies broke into pale dust. Their skills, fear, and pain entered Echo. The silver floor cracked beneath his growing strength. He had become the thing he hated in front of the entire city. I could have used those seconds to attack him. Instead, I turned toward his remaining copies. I drove my sword into the floor. Lightning and water spread through the ring. Earth lifted the control point, and fire melted Magnus's chain. The cage opened. Echo's surviving copies fell free. Magnus closed his fist. Nothing happened. The audience roared. Magnus charged Faye. Petra blocked him. Gareth's bronze hound attacked from the side, and Bess threw a pot lid that struck his head. "That was for the eggs," she shouted. Magnus turned toward them. "Arrest everyone." The capital champions stepped from their line. "The emergency order required unresolved identity," he said. "The identity was resolved before activation." "Today I answer to the mirrors," the champions said. The guards lowered their weapons. Petra disarmed Magnus, and the bronze hound pushed him onto his back. The man who called copies equipment lay beneath a metal dog while 100 mirrors recorded him. Echo did not join it. He stood in the broken cage surrounded by pale dust. 73 copies had returned to him. 27 remained. His return skill had climbed beyond mine. He drew his blade. "You proved you came first," he said. "Yes. That does not prove you deserve the name." "No," he attacked. Wind hit his first strike. Earth trapped my feet, and fire closed my retreat. His blade cut my coat and drove me through a silver bar. I rolled beneath his lightning as the court cleared around us. Echo used the canter from page 83. He expected me to retreat. I stepped forward instead. His sword cut my shoulder. My forehead struck his nose. He stumbled. The move had no mastery level. I had chosen something stupid at the correct moment. Echo touched the blood beneath his nose. That was not in the memory. I made it now. Fire met water and steam hid us. I threw my sword one way and moved the other. Echo knew my old habits, not the choice I made now. Alchemy powder entered the anchor runes on his left arm. Faye shouted, "Do not strike the center, break the command branch." Lightning shattered the branch controlling his remaining copies while leaving the runes sustaining his body intact. They became free, and Echo's sword slowed. "You cannot dismiss me," he said. "I am not trying to." Fire and water split the steel brace around his anchor. The main anchor rune appeared beneath it. One sword strike could destroy the rune and force Echo back into me. His independent life would become another memory inside me. Echo looked at the sword lying beside my foot. "Do it," he said. The court became quiet. I kicked the sword away. No. His eyes widened. You need my experience. I have enough. You need the library techniques. Faye reads quickly. For the first time, Echo laughed without bitterness. You still make bad jokes. That proves we are related. Faye approached with the thin mirror. The anchor can be separated, she said. The library core can replace Nolan's mana as the sustaining source. Echo would lose access to the clone class until a legal review. Magnus shouted from beneath the bronze hound. Forbidden! Bess threw the second pot lid. It missed him and struck Quentin's truth barrier. I was aiming for both, she said. The audience laughed again. Echo looked at the surviving copies. They watched him carefully. Not for orders, for danger. He finally understood Mabel's test. Separate it, he told Faye. The ritual took 19 minutes. No one left. Faye placed 5 crystals around Echo. Mabel supplied fire. Petra held the broken cage away from the lines. I opened the root connection voluntarily. The silver thread between Echo and me became visible one last time. It thinned. Then it moved from my chest to the black library crystal. My locked clone slot opened. Echo remained standing. The national board changed. Nolan, original identity confirmed. Echo, independent derived person. 1,000 witnesses read the words. The city mirrors repeated them. Echo had lost my name. He had gained his own. The 27 copies gathered around him. He did not command them to return. Some chose to disappear after speaking with him. Others asked for temporary names and separate hearings. The court recorded every choice. Magnus was arrested under the same public mirrors he had planned to use for my containment. The capital champion removed his black badge. Petra removed the bronze hound only after Magnus promised not to classify it as furniture. Quentin and Rufus attempted to claim they had warned Mirror Office about the danger. Faye played Quentin's guardian command. Then she played Rufus activating the iron bore. The crowd shouted both men into silence. By evening, the Imperial clerk announced the judgment. My national rank returned to 9th. The 300 gold prize was released. Mirror Office owed 600 gold in compensation for illegal containment. Greybridge granted me permanent access to the Forbidden Library under public supervision. The Academy Council recognized Master of Parallel Learning as a unique advanced class. My title changed again. First Parallel Master. The title sounded more impressive than the bruises beneath it. My sword mastery had reached level 53. My elemental skills stood between level 35 and level 42. My mana had risen to 64. My body felt as if 100 people had used it to move furniture down a staircase. Power had increased. My total reward had increased by 900 gold. My status had risen from disputed copy to the first legally recognized master of my class. All 3 victories appeared on every public board before sunset. The reaction lasted longer than the battle. Students filled the academy yard. Merchants offered contracts. Parents asked whether their children could join my laboratory. 3 nobles sent marriage proposals before learning Mabel was standing beside me. She burned all 3 envelopes. Accident? I asked. Fire practice. That was the clearest answer she had ever given me. Bess reopened the shop after midnight. She served soft buns filled with warm custard. The tops shone with butter. Orange peel floated in black tea. A pan of small pancakes waited beneath honey and crushed nuts. Petra ate in silence for almost 1 minute. It was a personal record. Gareth had a bandage around his head, although no one remembered him being struck. The pot lid moved very fast, he explained. Faye sat beside Echo at the far end of the table, reviewing the conditions of his temporary legal status. No one flirted. Faye spoke in short, legal sentences, and Echo looked more afraid than he had during our duel. The surviving copies occupied another table. They chose their own food. I sat near the window with Mabel. My shoulder was wrapped. My ribs hurt. My hands shook whenever a returned memory passed too close to the surface. She poured tea for me. "Can you still tell?" I asked. "Which Nolan is real?" "Yes." She looked around the room. Echo had my face. The remaining copies had my face. Several recording crystals outside the window displayed my face. Mabel leaned closer. The real one is the person who decides what to do next. Then she kissed me. It was brief, warm, and tasted of orange tea. Bess struck the counter with a spoon. Food first, romance after rent. The room laughed. For the first time since awakening my class, every laugh felt friendly. I ate one custard bun, then another. The soft bread pulled apart beneath my fingers. Warm cream filled the center. Outside, Greybridge repeated the story of the failed summoner whose weakest copy had challenged the Empire. I knew the story would grow. Crowds improved every victory and simplified every mistake. The truth was less clean. I had gained thousands of hours, hundreds of gold, and a national rank. I had also created a person, killed versions of him, and nearly repeated the same mistake until he forced me to see it. My cheat remained simple. Everything a clone learned returned to me. The difficult part was deciding what I had the right to take. Near dawn, I returned to the small room above the shop. I no longer needed the room. 900 gold could buy a house. I kept it for one more night. The chair still faced the window where Echo had once asked how many times he had died. I sat there and closed my eyes. The system spoke. My class had reached a new threshold. I expected another clone slot or a higher learning limit. Instead, the voice reported an error. A clone with no registered creator had awakened beneath the capital. Its recorded age was 312 years. Its accumulated training exceeded 1 million hours. Then the system delivered the final line. The ancient clone had opened its eyes and used my name.